Hey guys, this is Horror 5, and before I start this video, I do want to say, if you notice there's something different, that's because Boomer's here. Boomer is my Great Dane that I rescued from a couple states over, drove out there, picked him up, because he was pretty bad off. He was a rescue dog, he was severely underweight, malnourished, and he has a very bad anxiety problem. He is the sweetest dog you'll ever meet, but I guess tonight I went downstairs, started making videos. It's late. He heard me. He started whining. So I'm going to try my best to keep him calm and do the videos at the same time. And if you guys are curious, he is starting to pack on weight. He's doing better. His anxiety is just getting the best of him. So I'll see if he lets me take it. But he always has to have his little foofy. He has to have his little foofy, and he has to be next to me. And when I get home, he jumps up, he gives me hugs, and I'm 6 foot tall, but when he gives me hugs, he stands up here. So I appreciate it, guys. I'm gonna try my best and keep him comfortable at the same time. Thank you, guys. Now, here at Horror 5, we're doing a $150 giveaway to the first person within 1,000 people that like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. So we're going to select someone at random, $150 giveaway. It could be yours.
Be advised, the suspect is armed and considered extremely dangerous. 911, what's your emergency?
We have a call back for 86 in 2 seconds.
Now, to start things off in Georgia, we are going to start right out with Roberta Elder. Now, Roberta Elder had actually coined the name Miss Bluebeard because she was a murderer focused on her own family. Elder was arrested in 1952, where she had already murdered at least 14 people. The motive for all of the murders were monetary gain. The weapon of choice that she used? Arsenic poisoning. So Elder began killing in 1938 when John Woodward died under suspicious circumstances in December. Not long after, Elder's own son from her first marriage died 6 months later in June. He was only 13 years old. Jimmy Hunter, a grandson of Elder, died as well in 1941, and over the next 10 years, Elder's killing spree continued, claiming at least 10 more lives, including 3 spouses, along with her own children and grandchildren. Nobody that was in Elder's care was safe. It was not until 1952 that people were suspicious of Elder, when her third husband, Reverend William H. Elder, died from what appeared to be pneumonia. He was actually a construction worker who had fallen ill at work after eating a lunch of bananas and cheese, then went home to the loving care of his wife. The family physician considered it an upset stomach and instructed her to call if it gets worse. But unfortunately, by the time the next phone call came, it was too late. He was dying, and the family doctor had actually noticed some pretty unusual symptoms, and he called the coroner, who was also very suspicious. Plus, mix that in with the recent deaths in the past 2 years, that's when he finally decided he was testing for arsenic, and it was a match. Life insurance policies were actually taken out on all of the ill, and there were actually other family members that came forward when they said they had fallen ill and not died. She was arrested and charged in September 26, 1952. Coming up next, we have the Atlanta Ripper. The Atlanta Ripper was an unidentified serial killer between 1909 and 1914 who was suspected of killing anywhere from 15 to 21 African American Atlanta women. May 28, 1911, the body of Belle Walker was found 25 yards away from her home in Atlanta by her sister after she had failed to return home from work the previous night. What was discovered was her throat was viciously slashed by an unknown assailant. June 15th, another woman, Addie Watts, was found with her throat cut in a very similar fashion. The press had actually coined the killer the Atlanta Ripper. They found 6 suspects, but not a single conviction, and the crime was never solved. This is back before forensics and everything like that, so basically all they had to work with was there any witnesses? What can we find on the person? Is there any footprints? Is there any standard stuff like that? There was no labs, there was no DNA testing, nothing. So it wasn't a crazy thing for crimes like this to go unsolved unless someone actually physically saw the killer. By the end of 1911, 15 women in their early 20s had been murdered in the same manner, and the Ripper may have had up to 21 women. There was no conclusive proof that it was only one person that carried out these vicious attacks. The person was also coined with the same stylings as Jack the Ripper. So Jack the Ripper was a serial killer from across the pond he had a very sick and twisted way of killing, especially prostitutes, sex workers, things like that. So this Ripper was targeting a very specific group. Very young African American women. So it was the same style, same fashion. He had a single motive, a specific type of person. There was a lot of coincidences. Unfortunately, to this day, there have not been any discoveries, no admittances, no anything. No arrests were ever made for the Atlanta Ripper. And next we have another one that a lot of people know about, but I'm going to cover it for the people that don't know. We have the Centennial Olympic Park bombing. July 27th, 1996, there was a backpack planted at Centennial Park. Unbeknownst to everyone, there was a large homemade bomb inside of this backpack. It was detonated with over 100 injured and some deaths. Shortly after, 2 more locations were bombed, in Georgia and one in Birmingham, Alabama, resulting in multiple injured and the death of a police officer. There were no arrests made, and the perpetrator actually evaded capture for 5 years. Eric Rudolph was later determined as the man behind the bombs. The motive for the attacks were politically based. In his April 13, 2005 statement, he went on to talk about the Olympic movement and global socialism, and blames the attack to confound anger and embarrass the Washington government to the world for its abominable sanctioning of abortion on demand. He went to the furthest extremes you could possibly think of to make his point. He didn't believe in abortion, so he figured the way to get other people to believe what he believes is I'm going to blow places up. I'm going to set off bombs. The original suspect was actually Richard Jewell, a park security guard who was blamed and berated for the attack, initially being hailed as a hero for saving countless lives. All of that came crashing down, twisting his story, his life story, from a failed cop who wanted to be a hero to become a cop. Rudolph remained on the FBI's top 10 list with a $1 million reward. Rudolph survived for as long as he could in the wilderness, but was eventually captured in 2003 by a rookie cop while Eric Rudolph was looking through a dumpster behind Save-A-Lot at 4 a.m. Unknown to him, he had actually caught the Centennial bomber. To avoid the death penalty, Rudolph agreed to a plea bargain to tell where all of the dynamite he had was, in exchange for no trial to avoid death. Rudolph then released a statement explaining the bomb served as the cause of an anti-abortion and anti-gay terrorism. He now spends 23 hours a day alone in his cell. And next we have the Camilla Massacre. September 19th, 1868 depicted a massacre that happened during the Reconstruction of Georgia. 2 months before, Georgia had fulfilled the requirements of Congress's plan and had been readmitted into the Union, yet early September, the state expelled 28 newly elected African American members because they were an eighth black. They led a 25-mile march of several hundred African Americans and a few whites from Albany to Camilla to attend a Republican political rally. But in a very turn for unfortunate events, whites from Mitchell County determined there was not going to be any kind of rally, but as the marchers approached the courthouse square, a string of whites stationed in local storefronts opened fire, killing about a dozen people and wounding at least 30 more. As the marchers returned, the hostile members from Mitchell County followed them and began assaulting them for miles. So they didn't want any kind of bad business when they entered this town. It was peaceful. They were opened fire on and they tried to leave, and they were followed. They were followed, being berated and attacked for miles. This news spread like wildfire. Republicans and Democrats used this massacre to fortify their positions of Reconstruction in the 1868 presidential campaign. This violence intimidated a lot of African Americans who actually stayed home on the day of the election, and white leaders committed fraud at the voting polls, deliberately misplacing many black votes and replacing them with the Democratic ones, which led to a huge racial minority in southwest Georgia, and they carried the election. Republican members of Congress were so appalled by the violence and the fraud, they actually made it a thing to require Georgia to be under military law and radical Reconstruction once again. This massacre was actually hidden from the public until 1998, where Camilla residents acknowledged this massacre for the first time, and they actually commemorated the victims. See, I wouldn't be able to imagine a peaceful rally turning into such horror like that, let alone that. But then for it to be twisted in some political propaganda, and then again for voters fraud. It's insane. And here we have a horrible story, Shirley and Russell Dermond. They were a couple that was married for the better part of 68 years. They had 4 children and a grandson. Family was the absolute most important thing to them. Both of them were in their late 80s, but in May 2014, the unthinkable happened. Before, this couple had moved away for retirement from Atlanta to the Greater Waters subdivision, which was a gated enclave on Lake Oconee. They had a 4-bedroom home in a wooded cul-de-sac. The home was worth $650,000. You want to talk about a retirement? I've seen pictures of this home. It was gorgeous. I mean, there's a lake right there. It's where I would want to retire. But on May 6th, 2014, the couple didn't go to their neighbor's Kentucky Derby party 3 days earlier, and they grew worried. They haven't heard from the Dermans. So the friends went to do a welfare check. The front door was unlocked, and inside the garage, they found the body of 88-year-old Russell Derman, who was a Navy vet. He was found lying in a pool of blood between the Lexus and Lincoln. His head was decapitated. The killer actually deliberately placed towels to prevent the blood from exiting the garage to buy himself some more time. Now, if you can imagine, in between two cars, he was decapitated. He was laying there. Obviously, there is a lot of blood. So the killer actually stuffed the towels at the bottom of the garage door, so when the blood came, it would just soak into that towel. That way it wouldn't alert any of the neighbors. Shirley was actually nowhere to be found. A week and a half of investigation, this atrocious murder, it actually led to a fisherman finding her body in a lake. Where she had surfaced was about 5 miles from their home. She was weighed down with concrete blocks that were bound to a rope and to her legs, but she was not decapitated. But she was killed by a very vicious blow to the head. There were no suspects, no leads, nothing. And I mean, this family was very well loved, and investigators had no clues to go off of. And they deemed the culprit to be a very sadistic, vicious killer. These murders rattled detectives and the county, and to this day, no one has been found. The case remains unsolved. If anyone has information or tips to help investigations, you are urged to call the Putnam Sheriff's Office.